Todd Barrett was 48 and built like weathered oak. Broad shoulders, one knee that never fully straightened, and the kind of face polite people looked past in grocery aisles. A pale, split scar ran through his right brow and disappeared into his temple. Faded navy ink climbed both forearms, blurred by years and sun. His leather vest, black once, now the color of old coffee, had been patched and repatched until it looked less like a uniform and more like a map of road survived. On a gray Saturday morning, he eased his Harley up to Pump 3 at the county quick fill just off Route 16. Rain threatened but hadn't committed yet, a flat sky pressing down on wet asphalt. Behind him rolled the other steel Mercy riders, Pike on his road glide, Link on a stripped Softail, and Manny on a scarlet Dyna that coughed at idle like a chain smoker. They weren't out joyriding. The plan was simple and unglamorous. Fuel up, then head to a volunteer fire barn in Harper's Crossing for trauma kit drills. The chapter did it once a month because the nearest staffed ambulance had been moved 2 counties over after budget cuts, and 30 miles on paper could mean 45 minutes in rain. Pike killed his engine and swung a leg down. "You still got those pediatric airway masks in your saddlebag?" Todd nodded. 2. Expire next spring. County should be buying those. County should fix Miller Ridge, too, Manny muttered, glancing at the road where water always pooled. But here we are. At the far pump, a man in a pressed navy golf shirt topped off a silver Mercedes SUV. He had clean white sneakers and a smart watch that flashed every few seconds when he raised his wrist. Late 30s, maybe early 40s. Country club tan. He gave Todd's bike a once-over with the kind of smile people wore when they were sure the world agreed with them. Inside the store, a teenage clerk who knew Todd by name set aside 2 black coffees before he asked, "Morning, Mr. Barrett." "Morning, Liv. You all still doing those first aid classes next weekend?" "If the roof doesn't blow off the garage first," Todd said, and she laughed. When he came back out balancing cardboard trays, the man in the golf shirt was in mid-performance. He had turned half toward a couple by the ice chest and half toward his own reflection in his window, voice pitched just loud enough to carry. "Look at this," he said, jerking his chin at Todd's vest. "Halloween costume with a felony record." The woman by the ice chest snorted. The man with her gave a quick, guilty grin and looked away. 2 college kids near Pump 1 held their phones up, pretending to check messages while they filmed. Somebody else chuckled behind tinted glass. Todd set the coffees on Pike's seat and kept his face blank. He had heard worse. He had heard it in court parking lots, in school pickup lines, in waiting rooms where mothers pulled children closer when he sat down. Scar plus leather plus motorcycle equaled threat in a lot of minds. No one asked what the trauma shears clipped to his vest were for. Pike looked over, jaw hardening. "You want me to—" Todd shook his head once. "No." The man in the golf shirt smirked, pleased at the audience he'd gathered and the easy win of mocking someone he thought couldn't answer without proving him right. He tapped his card, grabbed a bottled water, and stepped back into his SUV without another glance. Todd paid for fuel, tucked the receipt into his pocket, and buckled his helmet strap. He could feel eyes on him, waiting for a scene that would confirm every cheap story told about men like him. He gave them nothing. Engines turned over in sequence, low and familiar. Steel Mercy rolled out in formation, tires hissing over damp pavement, and left the quick fill and its little crowd behind. Route 16 narrowed past the grain silos, then rose and dipped along fields gone patchy with late-season weeds. Gray light flattened everything. The barns, the billboards, the wet shoulders where plastic bags caught in fence wire. Todd rode lead, Pike 2 lengths behind on his right, Manny and Link staggered to the left. They spoke only in short radio bursts through helmet comms. Dispatch board says 2 units down in South County, Pike said. Todd grunted. Heard that. No backup from Franklin today either. Copy. Miller Ridge loomed ahead, a long curve where the county's patchwork asphalt had sunk into shallow bowls. Water collected there every storm, and every storm someone hydroplaned. There had been petitions, photos, near misses, no repairs. Rain finally came as a thin spray, then harder, peppering visors and lifting mist from the road. Todd eased off the throttle as they approached the base of the ridge. Up ahead, brake lights bloomed red in a tight cluster, too sudden, too many. Slow, 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 he said into comms. A pickup in the right lane jerked sideways. The sedan behind it slammed brakes, fishtailed, clipped a compact SUV in the rear quarter. The SUV spun in a full 6 circle, crossed the lane backward, struck the median curb, and rolled. Metal screamed. Glass burst outward in glittering sheets. The vehicle landed on its passenger side against the guardrail, roof crushed inward like a folded can. Everything stopped and moved at once. Horns blared. One driver abandoned his car and ran to the shoulder. Another stayed inside with both hands on the wheel, eyes huge. Steam, or smoke, began to rise from the SUV's crumpled front end. Todd was off his bike before it settled, kickstand biting gravel. Scene check, he barked. Pike had his saddlebags open in seconds, tossing nitrile gloves. Traffic still lived. Watch the lane. Manny sprinted back uphill, waving both arms to force cars to stop before they piled into the wreck. Link dragged a reflective triangle from his kit and set it in the lane, then another 20 yards back. Bystanders collected quickly under umbrellas and jacket hoods, forming a half-circle of worry and distance. Voices rose. Don't touch anything, you'll get sued. Is anyone calling 911? I already did. They said units are coming. God, there's a kid's seat in there. One woman stood 10 feet away, filming, phone held two-handed and steady. Todd ignored all of it and dropped to a knee at the driver's side opening, what used to be the top of the SUV. Shattered glass crunched under his boots. Rain and coolant dripped down his sleeves. Inside, a woman in her 30s hung by her seatbelt, hair plastered across her face, eyes half open and unfocused. Blood ran from a cut at her scalp into one ear. In the back seat, behind a collapsed headrest, a boy maybe 8 or 9 was twisted sideways, one leg trapped where the frame had buckled. Ma'am, can you hear me? Todd called. My name is Todd. We're here. She made a wet sound in her throat. Pike appeared at his shoulder with trauma shears and a C-collar. Fuel smell. Yeah. Link relayed from his phone, speaker loud under rain. Dispatch says nearest rescue ETA 22 minutes, maybe longer. 1 medic unit, tied up southbound, 2nd unit delayed. Todd looked at the clock in his head. Rain, pooled fuel, compromised roof, child pinned, unstable airway risk. 22 minutes was a lifetime. He reached in carefully, gloved hands framing the woman's jaw and neck to keep alignment. Pike, on my count, cut belt and support torso, slow as you can. Pike leaned in, blade sliding under the taut webbing. Ready? 3, 2, 1. The belt snapped. Weight shifted. Together, they eased her onto a tarp, links spread across broken glass and asphalt. The woman moaned once, then sagged. Pulse rapid, breathing shallow, Pike said. Possible concussion, possible cervical injury. Todd pressed 2 fingers at her carotid and nodded. Keep her talking if she can answer. Don't let her sleep. From inside the wreck came a thin, panicked voice. Mom! Mom! Todd moved to the back opening and tried the rear door. It didn't budge. The frame had twisted into itself, seam pinched tight. He braced the boot and pulled harder. Nothing. Rain ran down his neck in cold streams. "Hey, buddy," he called into the dark interior. "You hear me? I'm Todd. We're going to get you out." The boy cried out when he tried to move. "My leg! It's stuck! It's stuck!" "I know. Don't yank it. Listen to my voice." He could just make out the angle, the left shin wedged under a bent section of seat track and side panel. If they pulled wrong, they could spiral fracture the bone or tear vessels. If they waited too long, fire or shock would do worse. On the shoulder, people kept offering advice from a safe radius. "Can't you just break the window?" "You need the jaws of life for that." "Don't touch him, his spine." Todd looked up sharply. "If you want to help, clear space and hold those tarps for rain cover. If not, back up." A few flinched. A few finally moved. Link crouched beside him with phone still on speaker. Dispatch repeated the same line in a strained, practiced voice. "Rescue is en route, sir, but we have significant delays due to staffing shortages and a secondary collision. Do not attempt extrication unless there is immediate danger." Immediate danger was a smell in the air, gasoline threading through rainwater in rainbow streams, running downhill under tires and boots. Pike met Todd's eyes. "If we wait, kid could crash. If we pull blind, we could cripple him." Todd nodded once, jaw tight. This was the line that never got easier. Act with imperfect tools or watch the clock while someone's window narrowed. Behind them, splashing footsteps pounded through puddles. A voice cut across the noise, breathless and breaking. "Move! Move! Please!" The man in the navy golf shirt shoved between two onlookers. Hair soaked flat now, shirt darkened with rain and mud at the hem. He had no smirk left, only raw fear. He stared at the overturned SUV, then at the woman on the tarp, and something in his face collapsed. "Emily," he whispered, dropping to his knees beside her. Louder now, ragged. "Emily! Oh, God, Eli's in there." He looked up at Todd, and recognition flashed. Quick, sick, undeniable. The biker from the gas station. The man he had mocked 10, maybe 15 minutes earlier for sport. His mouth opened as if an apology might come first, but only a strangled sound came out. From inside the wreck, the boy screamed again. Todd held the father's gaze for one hard second while rain hammered metal and sirens still did not come. Then he turned back to the crushed rear seat, where seconds were already running out. "Then help me by listening," Todd snapped, already moving. He pointed to the man's shaking hands. "You touch that frame right now, you could collapse it on him." The father froze, chest heaving. "That's my son." "I know." Todd's voice dropped to steel. "So do exactly what I say." He waved Pike over with 2 fingers. "How's Mom? Still breathing? Pupils uneven. She's trying to fade." Pike pressed gauze at Emily's scalp and looked toward the SUV. Kids screaming less. That's not better. Manny came splashing back from uphill, drenched through. "Traffic stacking for a quarter mile. I got 3 drivers blocking with hazards, but folks are trying to snake around on the shoulder." "Keep them out of this lane," Todd said. "No sparks. No idiots." Link crouched beside the rear opening and shined a pen light into the crushed back seat. The beam caught a pale face, wet cheeks, and one sneaker at an impossible angle under bent metal. "Hey, Eli," Link called, soft and clear, using the name he'd heard the father cry. "You're doing good, buddy. Keep talking to us." "I can't get out," the boy sobbed. It hurts, it hurts." "I know," Todd said, leaning in until his shoulder touched broken trim. "Look at me if you can. You see my glove?" A small nod, barely visible through the tangle of seat fabric and plastic. "Good. I need you to do one thing. Big breaths in your nose, out your mouth, in and out. Can you copy me? Another tiny nod. Rain thickened, running in sheets off the upside door frame, drumming on the guardrail like fists. Gasoline floated in rainbow veins through the water at Todd's knees. He scanned for active flame, exposed wires, arcing. Nothing obvious yet, but the front compartment hissed intermittently, heat and pressure trapped somewhere under the bent hood. Behind him, the father lurched forward again, voice cracking. Please, just pull him. Todd didn't turn. What's your name? The man blinked, thrown by the question. What? Your name. Darren. Darren, listen to me. If we yank him, we can rip his leg open from the inside. He could bleed out before the ambulance gets here. I need you useful, not loud. Darren pressed both hands over his mouth, then nodded hard, eyes red and wild. Link raised his phone. Dispatch was still on speaker, calm and maddeningly distant through static and rain. Sir, I need you to confirm number of patients. 3 in primary crash, Link said. Adult female extracted. Conscious, but altered. Pediatric male pinned rear seat. Adult male ambulatory. Copy 3 patients. Fire/rescue ETA now 26 minutes. Repeat. 26. Pike swore under his breath. ETA is going backwards. Todd made the call in his head before he spoke it out loud. We start controlled extrication now. Dispatch heard him. Sir, don't proceed unless there is immediate life threat. Todd cut the speaker with one wet thumb and handed the phone back to Link. Document everything. Timestamps. He reached for his saddlebag, pulled a compact pry bar, then tried the rear frame seam again, bracing against slick metal. The tool bit groaned, slipped. He reset and pushed harder, forearms shaking. The frame gave maybe a 1/4 inch, then snapped back. Not enough, he grunted. Pike slid in beside him. We can take glass and go through hatch? Todd looked to where the rear hatch had folded inward against the guardrail, crushed and inaccessible. No angle. Manny returned with a red extinguisher from a pickup driver and tossed it to Link. Guy in the Ford had one. Good, Todd said. Stage it here. Around them, the half-circle of bystanders had shifted from curiosity to frightened attention. Some still held phones chest high, recording with numb faces. Others hovered with hands half lifted, wanting to help but waiting for permission to become involved. Todd gave it to them. You, he said to a woman in a yellow raincoat, hold that umbrella over my medic's hands. Keep rain off her face. The woman nodded and moved instantly. You two, he called to the college kids from the gas station. Flashlights. In through this opening. Don't blind the kid. They swallowed, then obeyed, one dropping his phone into his pocket without stopping the video. To Darren, Todd said, get over by your wife. Talk to her. Tell her where she is. Keep her awake. If she tries to sit up, stop her. Darren stared at him for a beat, shame flickering over panic. Later, Todd said. Move. Darren moved. Todd leaned back into the vehicle, close enough for Eli to see the outline of his helmet and scar. Eli, I need to touch your leg, okay? It'll hurt for a second. I need to know where it's stuck. Don't leave me, Eli whispered. Not going anywhere. He slid one gloved arm through sharp-edged plastic and felt along the boy's shin. The lower leg was trapped under a bent seat track and collapsed sidewall, pressure across mid-tibia. Warm blood, but not pumping. Foot still warm. Toes moved when he asked. Good signs. Fragile signs. We can do this, he said quietly to Pike. But we need spread, not pull. Pike already understood. Jack? Todd nodded once. And a lever. The jack in Todd's saddlebag was meant for lifting a bike a few inches off the ground in a garage, not prying apart a crushed SUV in the rain. but it was steel, threaded, and better than empty hands. Manny skidded up with it, and a tire iron. "This all we got?" "It's what we're using." Todd knelt in water and mud and sighted the frame lines, searching for 2 points strong enough to separate without snapping and sending shrapnel inward. The obvious spots were too thin. One wrong torque, and it would shear straight through into the back seat. Link aimed his light where Todd pointed. "Here?" "Lower. No, lower than that, there. Seat rail to door beam." Pike checked Emily again, then looked over her shoulder. "She keeps asking for Eli. Voice is weaker." Darren sat in the mud beside his wife, one hand gripping the blanket around her, the other shaking against her shoulder. "Em, stay with me, okay? Hey, look at me. Look at me." He glanced toward Todd, helpless. "She keeps closing her eyes." Todd didn't look away from the frame. "Keep talking. Ask her questions she has to answer. Wedding date? Eli's birthday? Anything?" Darren nodded and bent close to her ear. His voice broke on every word. A horn blared from uphill, long and angry. Manny spun and sprinted toward it. A lifted truck was trying to edge around the stopped line on the shoulder, tires spraying water toward the scene. Manny slammed his palm on the hood and pointed backward, with a face that promised consequences. The truck stopped. At the wreck, Todd wedged the tire iron into a seam and tested pressure. Metal shrieked. Eli yelped inside. "Stop! Stop! Stop!" Pike snapped. Todd backed off immediately. "Eli, talk to me." "I'm here," the boy cried, gasping. "Please hurry." "We hear you." "You're brave as hell, buddy." Link crouched lower, phone to ear now. "Dispatch, says fire unit rerouted. Maybe another 10 behind rescue." Pike barked a bitter laugh. "So maybe 36. "Maybe," Link said. Rain kept coming. Coolant hissed. Gas smell thickened when wind shifted. A man in a business suit, soaked, tie hanging loose, stepped from the crowd, voice tight. "I'm an orthopedic PA. Not trauma, but tell me what you need." Todd gave him a fast up-down assessment, then pointed. "Gloves on. You're with Pike at the patient on the tarp. Watch airway, keep C-spine neutral. If she vomits, roll as unit." The man nodded, already pulling nitriles from Pike's open kit. Another bystander, older woman with a tote bag, held up a clean blanket and a box of bottled water. "I have these." "Blanket to the boy when he's out," Pike said. "Water for everyone else later." From inside the SUV, Eli's breaths went thin and rapid. Panic was burning oxygen he couldn't spare. Todd lowered his head to eye level with the trapped boy. "Eli, listen. I need slower breathing. Smell the rain, blow out birthday candles. In through nose, out through mouth. Show me." Eli tried, failed. Tried again. Better. "Good. Keep that going. You're helping us." Todd set the jack between the lower seat rail and buckled door frame, cranked until it touched both sides, then stopped. "If this slips, we abort. Everybody clear your hands." Pike moved to stabilize Eli's hip through the opening, forearm braced so the leg wouldn't twist when pressure changed. Link held light. One college kid held an umbrella overhead with both hands trembling. The other stood rigid with a first aid pouch Todd had ordered him to fetch from Manny's bike. Darren looked up from Emily, rain and tears indistinguishable. Can I do anything?" Todd almost said no. Then he saw the man's hands clamped white around the blanket, desperate for punishment or purpose, and chose purpose. "Yeah," Todd said. "Come here. Kneel where I point. Keep this tarp up so water stays off Eli's face. If I say move, you move fast. If I say stop, you freeze." Darren came at once, kneeling in mud beside the wreck, holding the tarp with both arms locked straight. Todd began turning the jack handle. 1 rotation, 2. The metal complained in long high notes. The seam widened a fraction. "Quarter-inch," Link said. "Need at least one." Todd cranked again. A bolt popped somewhere inside the panel with a gunshot crack. Everyone flinched. "Hold!" Pike barked. He checked Eli's leg position. "Still aligned. Keep going, tiny increments." Another rotation, another. The seam opened to maybe half an inch. Then the jackfoot slipped on the wet paint and lurched sideways. "Back! Back!" Todd shouted, catching it before it could eject. The tire iron shifted and scraped his forearm through the leather, opening skin. He ignored the sting, reset the base on a folded shop rag for traction, and wedged Manny's multi-tool under the foot as a chock. "Again," he said through his teeth. He cranked. Sweat mixed with rain under his helmet. Bad left knee grinding in protest, shoulders shaking from static strain. At the edge of the crowd, someone muttered, "They're gonna make it worse." Another answered, quieter, "They're the only ones doing anything." The phones were lower now. As Todd turned the jack another half rotation, Darren whispered, almost to himself, "I called you a criminal." The words landed in the rain between them. Todd didn't answer immediately. His eyes stayed on the trapped leg, on the tiny movements of Eli's toes, on Pike's hand signaling micro-adjustments. But Darren kept talking, voice hollow with shock. "At the station, I said," he swallowed. "I said those things. I didn't know. I didn't—" For a split second, anger flared hot and stupid in Todd's chest. The memory of the smirk, the laughter, the phones. Then just as fast, something older shoved it aside. Another road, another storm, headlights sliding past a wreck, while a younger Todd screamed for help, with blood on his hands and his boy going colder in the back seat, because everyone assumed someone else had already called. He felt that old helplessness like a fist around his throat. Not again. He looked at Darren fully for the first time since recognizing him. The man was stripped raw now, no audience, no swagger, only terror and guilt, and a son pinned under steel. "Darren!" Todd's tone was flat, clear. "Take that blanket. Get to your wife, talk to her, keep her awake. Don't move her neck." Darren nodded like a recruit receiving orders, and scrambled back to Emily. Todd turned to the crowd and raised his voice. "I need hands, not commentary. You in the yellow coat, stay on rain cover. Suit guy, keep airway watch. College kids, light steady. Anybody got extra tarps? Bring them. Anybody with road flares, do not light them near this fuel." People moved immediately now, urgency finally outrunning hesitation. A farmhand in coveralls dragged over a blue tarp from his truck bed. Two women held it as a windbreak. A teenage boy offered a headlamp. An older man knelt without being asked and held the jack base steady with gloved hands. Link leaned close. "We're at 3/4 inch. Need 1 1/4, Pike said. Maybe 1 1/2 if we want controlled release." Todd swapped the tire iron's angle and fed its curved end deeper into the seam, using it as a secondary lever while the jack held spread. "On my count, micro-lift only." "Micro-lifts? Pike, you own a leg. I don't move unless you say." Pike nodded once. "Ready." Todd slipped his left arm inside, inch by inch through jagged plastic and upholstery foam, until his glove found Eli's ankle. The boy jerked at contact. "It's me," Todd said. "Todd's hand. Squeeze my fingers if you hear me." A small squeeze. "Good man. We're about to make space. It'll feel weird and loud. You do not yank. You breathe." "I'm scared," Eli whispered. "Me too," Todd said, honest and calm. "Do it scared." He braced his bad knee in mud and pulled the tire iron toward him as Pike gave counter-pressure on the trapped limb. Manny, back from traffic control again, took over the jack handle and turned exactly as Todd directed. "Quarter. Stop. Quarter. Stop." Metal groaned, then yielded another fraction. 1 inch, Link said, voice rising. Hold it, Pike ordered. I've got room at the calf. Todd slid his arm farther, blood from his cut forearm slick under his sleeve. He worked 2 fingers between Eli's shin and the bent rail, creating just enough gap to reduce direct compression. Eli cried out, then panted through it. Eyes on me, Todd said. Tell me your dog's name. What? Dog's name. Tell me. Ranger. Good. What color is Ranger? Black. With white feet. Perfect. Keep talking about Ranger. As Eli described a dog that stole socks and slept on his bed, Todd and Pike coordinated tiny shifts. Rotate the ankle 2 degrees, lift shin a centimeter, pause, reassess, no sharp pull, no hero yank. Controlled, patient brutality against bad geometry. The crowd had gone quiet except for rain, commands, and Eli's shaking voice. No one was laughing now. No one was filming overhead. They were holding tarps, lights, pressure dressings, neck support, lane control, pieces of a system assembled from strangers, because 4 riders had acted like it already existed. Manny glanced uphill. Still no sirens. Then we keep going, Todd said. At last, Pike exhaled hard. I can move him maybe 2 inches without torque. Todd nodded. That's our window. He looked over once and saw Darren in the mud beside Emily, blanket around her shoulders, repeating their wedding date into her ear while she blinked slowly, fighting to stay present. Darren lifted his eyes to Todd, no words, just a shattered, grateful stare. Todd gave one short nod back and turned to Eli. Okay, buddy, he said, tightening his grip. We've got space now. Next part, you and me together. Okay, buddy, Todd said, tightening his grip. We've got space now. Next part, you and me together. He nodded to Pike. Pike braced Eli's thigh with one forearm and slid his other hand under the boy's calf, ready to guide, not yank. Manny, Todd said, 1/4 turn and hold. Manny turned the jack handle. Metal groaned, seam widening a hair. Eli, on 3 you slide your hips toward my voice, Todd said. Not your leg, your hips. Tiny move. 1, 2, 3. Eli tried. The trapped legs shifted a fraction. He cried out so sharply that 2 people in the crowd flinched backward. Stop, Pike said immediately. Hold. Hold. Todd froze in place, keeping pressure off the shin. You did it right, Eli. That was right. Up the hill came the sound of an engine revving hard, wrong for stopped traffic. Manny snapped his head around. A white crossover had broken from the backed-up line, trying to pass on the shoulder where Manny had been waving people off for 10 minutes. Its driver saw the stalled vehicles too late, jerked left, clipped a hazard triangle, and slammed into the rear corner of a parked pickup. The pickup lurched forward and sideways with a violent crunch that echoed down the wet lane. The impact sent a tremor through the guardrail, through the SUV frame. The twisted body shell shuddered under Todd's arms. The gap they'd created snapped narrower by a ½ inch. Eli screamed, then gulped for air in panicked sobs. Everybody back from the lane, Manny roared, sprinting toward the new crash point. Back! Engines off! Someone in the crowd shrieked. People who'd been holding tarps looked over their shoulders, torn between helping and self-preservation. One college kid dropped his flashlight. It clattered into pooled water and spun dimly. Todd didn't look up. Light! I need light now! The teen with the headlamp lunged in, hands shaking, and aimed the beam where Todd pointed. Pike kept one hand on Eli's pulse point at the ankle. Perfusions dropping, foots cooler. Rain came sideways in a sudden gust, flattening the blue tarp and ripping it from one woman's grip. It snapped like a sail, hit the guardrail, and skidded into the lane. A man chased it, nearly slipping under a stopped sedan. At Emily's side, Darren looked up wild-eyed at the secondary crash. What happened? What happened? Stay with her, Pike barked without turning. Dispatch crackled from Link's phone, now clipped to his shoulder and blaring in the open. Units approaching heavy congestion at Miller Ridge. Advise scene status. Link shouted over rain and horns. Secondary collision at perimeter. One possible minor injury. Primary pediatric still pinned. Fuel on roadway increasing. Copy. Fire still 7 out. Rescue 10 to 12. 10 to 12 might as well have been forever. The hiss from the SUV's front end sharpened. Less steam now, more pressure venting from somewhere hot. Wind pushed the gasoline sheen in thin, iridescent streams under the chassis. Toward them, then away, then back again. Todd scanned fast. The human system they'd built was fragmenting. Manny was tied up containing the shoulder crash. Link was juggling dispatch and scene control. Bystanders were rattled and drifting. If they lost coordination now, they lost Eli. He raised his voice until it cut through everything. Nobody leaves this perimeter unless I send you. We're still extracting the child. You in the suit. Take lane watch with Manny. Yellow coat, back on rain cover. Headlamp kid, stay with me. If you're filming, put the phone down and hold something useful. A woman who'd been recording tucked her phone away and grabbed the tarp edge with both fists. Darren staggered over 2 steps, then checked himself, torn between wife and son. Tell me what to do. Todd pointed with his chin. Back to Emily. She needs you conscious and steady. That's your job. Darren looked like he might argue, then saw Emily's eyes rolling half shut and dropped beside her again. The road answered with another long horn blast from uphill, then silence broken only by rain, ragged breathing, and the metallic tick of heat under a crumpled hood. Progress had taken 20 careful minutes. One reckless move from a stranger had nearly erased it, and the window was still closing. Reset, Todd said, voice lower now. We go smaller. He adjusted his shoulder deeper into the opening, ignoring a stab through his left knee. Pike repositioned at Eli's hip. Manny returned, limping slightly, water and mud to his waist. Shoulders bruised, not broken, Manny said. Truck idiots contained. Keys out. Suit guys with him. Good. Take the jack. Manny grabbed the handle again, jaw clenched. Eli, Todd said, you still with me? A weak, trembling, yeah. Good. This next one is tiny. If it hurts too much, you yell red. Got it? Red. Good man. Todd slid 2 fingers under the bent rail edge and nodded. Quarter turn. Manny turned. The jack threaded tight with a grinding vibration. Stop. Todd tested movement at Eli's ankle. 2-centimeter lift. Pike lifted, slow and controlled. Eli whimpered, teeth chattering. They had just enough room. Todd felt it, barely, a channel opening between bone and metal. Now hips, Todd said. Eli, inch toward me. The boy tried. Something inside the jack gave a sharp metallic pop. Then the threaded post stripped. The jack collapsed sideways with brutal speed. The seam slammed shut. Todd's right hand was still in the gap. He jerked back on instinct, but not before the edge crushed across his knuckles and peeled skin through the glove. Pain flashed white, electric up his forearm. He swore once, hard, and forced himself not to yank blindly. Eli screamed, "Red! Red! Red!" and then sobbed so hard he couldn't get a full breath. "Hands out! Hands out!" Pike shouted. Todd twisted, freed his glove, and came out with blood running from split knuckles and a torn thumbnail bent backward. His hand shook uncontrollably for 1 second, then he clamped it against his vest. Manny stared at the ruined jack. Threads are gone. It's dead. No immediate fix. No backup jack in any saddlebag. Their primary spreader was now scrap metal. Pike was already reassessing Eli through the gap. Leg pinned worse than before, swellings climbing, cap, refill slow. Todd forced his breathing down. Pulse? Faint at the foot. Still there, but weak. At the tarp, Emily started to retch. The suited PA called out, "She's vomiting." Pike spun. "Log roll. Darren, shoulder and hip together, now." Darren grabbed for Emily, but panicked and pulled from the wrong angle. Her neck shifted before Pike could correct him. "Stop!" Pike barked, repositioning his hands. "Follow me, not your fear." They rolled Emily as a unit. Vomit spilled into the rain and blood at the edge of the tarp. She coughed once, then went frighteningly quiet. "Emily," Darren whispered, louder. "Emily." "She's breathing," Pike snapped, checking airway. "But she's dropping. Keep talking to her." Darren's face folded in on itself. "I made it worse, didn't I?" "No," Pike lied, because there was no time for truth, shaped like blame. Todd looked down at his hand. Fingers flexed, mostly responsive, but grip strength was shot, pain pulsing with heartbeat. He could still work. He had to. Then Eli stopped crying. The sudden silence was worse than screaming. "Eli?" Todd leaned in. "Talk to me, buddy." A thin murmur came back. "I'm sleepy." Pike's eyes met Todd's. They both heard the danger in that one word. "No sleeping," Todd said sharply. "Tell me about Ranger chewing your shoes." No answer. "Eli." A faint breath. "Sorry." Todd felt the old fear claw up his spine, the same helpless edge from years ago, from a different wreck, from waiting too long because he thought sirens were close. He turned toward the crowd. "Anybody have a mechanical jack? Farm jack? Bottle jack? Anything steel?" A pause. Rain hissed. People looked at each other. An older farmer in a seed company cap raised a hand halfway. "Got a high lift in my bed. Ratchet's sticky. Bring it." The farmer ran. Link crouched near Todd. "Rescue says 6 minutes if they can clear the line." "If doesn't treat crush injury," Todd said. His voice sounded steady. Inside, doubt hit hard and clean. Maybe we just lost him. Maybe the best window had been the one before the secondary crash, before the jack failed, before his hand gave out. Maybe this was the minute everything tipped past recovery. He swallowed the thought whole. "New plan," he said. "No spreader reliance. We build lift point manually, crib under, then controlled slide." Manny stared at the mangled frame. "With what crib?" Todd looked around. Toolboxes, tire blocks, folded ramps, random cargo from Good Samaritans. Improvised rescue was ugly and slow and rarely textbook. But it was possible, if time and fire didn't run out first. "Wheel chocks, wood blocks, anything solid," he said. "Now." No one moved for half a second. Then everyone did. Darren knelt beside Emily, with his jeans soaked through, and both hands trembling against the blanket around her shoulders. Pike had moved back to the vehicle for 30 seconds to check Eli, leaving the suited PA to monitor Emily's airway. The noise of the scene blurred around Darren until only Emily's face stayed sharp. Her lashes were clumped with rain. Blood had dried dark at her hairline and kept re-wetting. Her wedding ring, a plain gold band she'd once said was too boring, then never replaced, glinted dull against muddy fabric. "Em," he whispered, pressing close so she could hear him. "Hey, stay with me. It's Darren." Her lips moved but made no sound. He remembered stupidly that he had left the house this morning angry about a dishwasher, about a school form, about who forgot to answer an email from Eli's teacher. The kind of marriage static that felt huge at 8:10 a.m. and vanished by noon. Before he left, Emily had said, "You keep performing confidence instead of telling the truth." He'd rolled his eyes, grabbed his keys, and gone to get gas. At the station, he'd seen men in leather and decided, without thought, who they were. Decided cruelty was cheap entertainment. Decided there would be no consequence. Now one of those men was bleeding into the rain, trying to save his son. Darren bent lower, voice shaking. I'm sorry. For this morning. For a lot of mornings. Emily's eyes fluttered open, unfocused. Eli? He's fighting, Darren said. They're with him. They're really with him. She swallowed, winced. Don't let him be alone. I won't, I swear, I won't. He had spent years curating a version of himself that never looked weak. Successful, composed, sarcastic at the right moments, dismissive before anyone could dismiss him. It had worked at work. It had poisoned everything else slowly enough he could pretend not to see it. He looked over at the wreck. Todd braced in mud with a torn glove, Manny hauling wood blocks, strangers taking orders like a practice team. No posture, no performance, just commitment. Darren felt something crack in him, not dramatic, just undeniable. "M," he said, voice breaking fully now. "If he comes out of this, I'm done pretending. I'm done talking like I know people because of what they wear, where they stand, what they ride. I'm done being that guy in front of him." Emily's fingers twitched under the blanket. He grabbed her hand carefully. "You hear me?" he said. "I'll do better where he can see it. Not speeches, actual better." Her eyes drifted closed again. Panic spiked. "Emily." "No, stay up, stay up. What's our anniversary?" A long pause, then barely audible. "June 12th. He laughed once, a broken little sound. Yeah. "And where did we go after the courthouse?" Her mouth moved. "Waffle House." "That's right. You in heels at Waffle House, because we had $6 left." He pressed his forehead to her hand. "Stay. Please stay." The suited PA touched Darren's shoulder. "She's still breathing. Keep her talking." Darren nodded fast, wiping rain from his eyes with the back of his wrist like that could clear anything. Across the median, Eli made a thin noise that might have been a cry. Darren looked up at Todd, mud-streaked and focused, and for the first time in years, Darren prayed without bargaining, without image management, without knowing if anyone was listening. Just this: let them both live. I'll carry the shame later. Just let them live. The farmer returned with a rust-flecked high-lift jack and a chain. "Ratchet, sticks at the top," he warned. Todd took it one-handed, tested the mechanism, and felt immediate resistance in the climbing pins. "It'll do." They anchored the base against the guardrail post and fed the chain through a reinforced door seam that hadn't fully torn. Not ideal, not safe, only option left. "Crib ready?" Todd called. Manny slid 2 hardwood blocks into place where the frame might lift. "Ready?" Link held light low. "Rescue says 4 minutes." Todd didn't answer. 4 minutes was weather, not fact. He set the high lift tongue and started ratcheting. Each stroke clacked loud in the rain. On the 3rd stroke, the pin skipped, then caught. On the 4th, the frame rose a breath. "Hold!" Pike checked Eli's leg. "We have microspace. Don't lose it." Todd ratcheted again. Pain in his crushed hand flared so hard his vision tunneled. But the frame lifted another fraction, and Manny kicked crib blocks deeper. "Set! Set!" Manny shouted. Todd eased load onto the crib. It held. "Eli," Pike said, close and firm, "we're almost there. I need one strong move from you. Can you do one?" A pause, then a whisper, "Okay." Todd slid his shoulder deeper into the wreck until jagged trim bit through his vest. He got one arm under Eli's back and the other to the trapped thigh. Bad leverage, bad angle. Only angle. "On 3, he said. "Pike, guide the leg. Manny, maintain lift. Link, if crib shifts you call it." Rain hammered harder, turning the median into slick clay. Darren, still kneeling by Emily, watched with hollow eyes and clutched her hand like an anchor. "One," Todd said. A sharp hiss erupted from the engine bay, louder, continuous. "Two." A thin orange line flickered under the crumpled hood, then vanished. Link saw it first. "Todd!" "Three." Before he could pull, flame licked out again, this time visible and steady, fed by something it had finally found. "Fire!" someone screamed. The crowd broke in two directions at once. One tarp dropped. The wind shifted, pushing heat and smoke along the vehicle's underside toward the rear cabin. Pike grabbed the extinguisher and blasted a white cloud toward the front of the wheel well. The flame dimmed, then came back through a different seam. "Extinguisher's not enough," Manny shouted. Todd looked at the fire, then at Eli's half-conscious face inches from his sleeve, then at the distance to where sirens might or might not be. Decision made itself. He locked eyes with Pike through smoke and rain. "Rapid extraction. Hard pull on my count." Pike nodded once, jaw set. Todd bent lower into the wreck, taking Eli's weight onto his shoulder, ignoring the heat building under the dashboard metal. Outside, Darren stood up so fast he slipped to one knee again in mud and shouted, voice raw enough to tear, "Please." Todd didn't look away from Eli. "Listen to me, buddy," he said. "When I say go, you hold onto my neck and do not let go." The orange glow brightened at the front cabin seam. Todd drew breath. "Ready!" "Ready." Todd planted his boots in slick mud, tucked Eli against his chest, and shouted, "Go!" Pike lifted at the trapped leg, while Manny leaned his full weight into the high lift handle to hold the gap open. Eli cried out once, high, tearing, then clamped both arms around Todd's neck like he'd been told. 2 inches, Pike yelled. "Stop! Rotate now!" Todd shifted his shoulder under Eli's ribs, keeping the boy's spine straight as best he could in a space built to fail. Heat rolled down from the dashboard in waves. Smoke thickened, greasy and black, and crawled along the roofline toward them. The frame creaked. Manny's voice broke. "Jack's slipping." "Hold it," Todd barked. He pulled with his right arm and braced with his left knee. Pain exploded through the bad joint, a sick crunch deep behind the kneecap, but Eli moved, 1 inch, then another. Pike guided the trapped shin free in a slow arc that should have taken 10 safe minutes and now had maybe 10 seconds. At the front of the SUV, flame punched out from under the hood, fed by a fresh gulp of air. Someone screamed from the shoulder. The white extinguisher cloud blew sideways and vanished in rain. "Leg is clear," Pike shouted. Todd backed out fast, half crawling, half dragging Eli through jagged trim and broken glass. The boy's sneaker caught on torn upholstery. Todd yanked it free and felt leather rip under his glove. As soon as Eli cleared the opening, Manny let go and dove backward. The lifted frame slammed down where Eli's leg had been. A heartbeat later, the dashboard ignited. Orange flooded the cabin. Heat slapped across Todd's face shield. He turned and ran through smoke toward the median, Eli's weight limp against his shoulder. "Lane! Clear the lane!" Link shouted, sweeping people back. Todd dropped to one knee on wet grass and laid Eli on a tarp. Pike was beside him before Todd could ask, oxygen line already in hand. "Airway patent," Pike said, fingers at Eli's jaw. Breathing fast, shallow, pulse thready. Todd stripped his burned glove with his teeth and pressed gauze to Eli's shin, where swelling ballooned under soaked jeans. "Manny, Trauma Pack B Link, timestamp extraction?" 11:42, Link shouted, voice hoarse. Darren stumbled toward them and collapsed beside the tarp, hands out but not touching. "Eli? Eli, buddy, I'm here. I'm here." Eli's eyes fluttered once toward his father, then rolled halfway closed. "Hey!" Todd snapped at him. "Stay with me. What's your dog's name?" Eli swallowed. Ranger. That's right. What does Ranger steal? A tiny breath. Socks. Good. Keep talking. Behind them, the SUV's front tires popped one after the other like gunshots. Bystanders flinched. Manny and the suited PA dragged Emily's tarp farther from the vehicle, while Pike shouted, "C-spine! Keep her neutral!" Sirens finally rose over the ridge, thin at first, then swelling into the rain, real this time. Red strobes bounced off standing water and chrome and terrified faces. A county fire engine nosed through the backed-up line, bumper inches from abandoned doors. Two firefighters jumped down with a charged line and foam canisters, boots splashing hard. A medic unit followed, then another from the next county, delayed and breathless and very late. "Who's incident command?" a fire lieutenant shouted. Todd pointed with his chin at Link. 3 primary patients, adult female head trauma, and possible C-spine. Pediatric male prolonged entrapment, left leg crush, smoke exposure, adult male ambulatory, shock, secondary shoulder impact, uphill, minor. Lieutenant took one look at the burning SUV, one look at the improvised cribbing and ruined jack, and nodded once like he understood exactly what had happened before they got there. "Good work," he said, already turning. "Engine 4, knock that fire now." Paramedics dropped beside Eli. "Name? Age?" "Eli Mercer. 8, Darren said, voice cracking. Please. Sir, give us space." They cut Eli's pant leg, splinted the swollen shin, hung oxygen higher, and started lines with practiced speed. One medic looked up at Todd's bleeding hand and charred sleeve. "You're burned." Todd shook his head. "Kid first. Kid is being handled. Sit down before you fall down." Todd ignored him and crawled 2 feet to Emily while Pike handed over report. Darren hovered between stretchers, eyes wild and useless, and desperate to help both. As Emily was loaded, she turned her head a fraction, despite straps and collar. "Eli? He's coming right behind you," Darren said, gripping the rail. I'm right here. She found his face through rain and smoke and gave the smallest nod. Then doors shut. Eli's stretcher rolled next. Todd reached out, touched the boy's blanket once. "You did good, kid." Eli's hand moved weakly toward the sound of Todd's voice, then disappeared into the ambulance. Darren turned to Todd as if waking from a blow. He grabbed Todd's burned glove where it still hung from 2 fingers and held it in both hands like he was trying to keep from drowning. His mouth opened, closed, opened again. He started, then couldn't finish. Todd looked at him, chest heaving, rain washing soot down his neck. He nodded once toward the ambulance doors. Be the dad he remembers when he wakes up. Darren's face crumpled. He nodded hard, climbed in, and the ambulance pulled away. Fire did not die politely. Even with foam, the SUV kept flaring from hidden pockets, coughing black smoke that stung eyes and throats. The secondary crash uphill had to be untangled before tow trucks could clear a lane. Deputies pushed back spectators while EMTs triaged the shoulder collision's driver, who kept insisting he was fine, through blood from his nose. Todd tried to stand and his left knee buckled. Manny caught him under one arm. "Easy, old man." "Don't call me old," Todd hissed when a weight hit his leg. "Cramp." "Yeah," Manny said dryly. "A cramp that sounds like gravel." A paramedic cut away Todd's glove and whistled at the hand underneath. Knuckles split, skin blanched and blistering where heat had licked through leather, thumbnail half avulsed. "You're coming with us." "No." That wasn't a question. Todd looked toward the disappearing ambulances, then at Pike, who was finally sitting back on his heels with soot across his cheeks and blood on both sleeves. "You good?" Pike gave him a flat stare. I'm great. Love spending Saturdays in burning cars. Link came over, rain dripping from his helmet. Sheriff wants statements, also wants to know who authorized civilian extrication. Todd snorted once. Gravity. The sheriff himself, Tom Bledsoe, arrived in a rain shell and muddy boots, notepad already out. He was old-school county law, calm voice, careful eyes, no appetite for theater. He took in the scene, the collapsed improvised tools, the blackened SUV, the medics still working. You Barrett? He asked. Todd nodded. Bledsoe held his gaze for a long beat, then said, I saw where the kid was pinned. If you'd waited for hydraulic tools, we'd be writing a different report. He clicked his pen. I need your timeline from first impact. Todd gave it. Chain reaction at Miller Base, extraction of driver, dispatch delay updates, controlled spread attempts, secondary shoulder collision, tool failure, ignition, rapid extraction. No dramatics, just facts and timestamps, with Link's phone log to back it. The driver of the white crossover, face pale, jacket over his head, kept trying to interrupt from 20 feet away. Road wasn't blocked. People were standing in the shoulder. They had motorcycles everywhere. Bledsoe didn't look at him. Deputy Harlan, get him checked and sober tested. The man bristled. I only had 2 beers at lunch. Great, Bledsoe said. Then this paperwork will be simple. He turned back to Todd. Any civilian injuries besides yours? Minor bruises. 1 possible shoulder at secondary point. Any volunteer names you want listed? Todd looked over the shoulder crowd, now helping firefighters roll hose and gather drop debris. Yellow raincoat woman, suited PA, 2 soaked college kids holding each other like they'd just discovered fear has weight. Farmer with the dead high lift. Headlamp teenager still clutching an empty first aid pouch. All of them, Todd said. They listened. Bledsoe wrote that down. The white crossover driver started again, louder. This is not on me. They created chaos. Todd turned, finally, and faced him. Rain ticked against hot metal behind them. Steam rose where foam hit engine block. For a second, everything narrowed to the man's defensive sneer, and Todd's burnt hand throbbing at his side. You drove around a stopped line into an active rescue scene, Todd said, voice low enough that the man had to lean in to hear. You almost killed a kid twice. The driver puffed up. You think you're a hero because you wear patches? Todd took 1 step closer. Not threatening, certain. No, I think you were told to stop and decided rules were for people slower than you. The man's eyes flicked to the scorched SUV, then to the firefighters, then to the deputies now listening. Bledsoe closed his notepad. Sir, you can save it for the statement room. Right now, you're done talking. Defiance drained out of the man in visible increments, replaced by the ugly confusion of someone realizing he might actually be held to account. He let Deputy Harlan lead him away, still muttering, but softer. The real antagonist, delay, ego, heat, indifference, had not folded all at once. It had taken metal, orders, pain, and people choosing to act against instinct. But it had lost. A medic touched Todd's arm again. Now you come with me. This time Todd didn't argue. The ER smelled like disinfectant, wet coats and burnt plastic. By the time Todd's hand was cleaned and wrapped and his knee scanned, evening had settled in hard against the hospital windows. Pike sat beside him with a cup of vending machine coffee and a bandage over 1 temple where flying glass had kissed him. Kid's in surgery, Pike said quietly. Compartment pressure in the leg. They got him in fast. Mom? Also in surgery. Subdural bleed, clavicle, maybe cervical soft tissue. They're optimistic, which in hospital language means nobody's promising anything. Todd leaned back against the wall and shut his eyes for 3 breaths. Adrenaline had burned off, leaving a deep tremor in his muscles and a pulsing ache everywhere he'd ignored for hours. Down the hall, Manny argued with registration about whether Steel Mercy counted as an organization for visitor forms. Link was on his third phone call, feeding names and timelines to the sheriff's office and the volunteer fire chief. A TV in the corner replayed shaky footage from Miller Ridge. Smoke, rain, riders in black vests bent over a wreck while captions guessed at gang violence before correcting to civilian rescue effort. The clip cut to the white crossover in the ditch, then to EMTs loading a child under blankets. Todd turned away from the screen. 2 hours later, a surgeon in blue scrubs stepped into the family room where they all sat in varying states of exhaustion. Darren was there, hands clasped so hard his knuckles had gone chalk white, Emily's sister beside him, eyes swollen. The surgeon looked first at Darren. "Your son is out of surgery. We relieved compartment syndrome in the left leg and stabilized fractures. He has smoke inhalation, but no severe airway burns. He's sedated, but he's expected to wake overnight." Darren folded forward like someone cut his strings, a sound between a sob and a laugh tearing out of him. "And your wife," the surgeon continued, "had a subdural bleed we evacuated. No spinal fracture seen. She's in ICU for monitoring, but she came through." Emily's sister started crying openly. Darren just stared at the surgeon, stunned, then whispered, "Thank you," over and over until words failed. He stood and crossed the room toward Todd. No cameras now, no crowd, just fluorescent lights and two men who had met wrong on a Saturday morning. Darren stopped a foot away. "I don't know how to say this without sounding like I'm trying to buy forgiveness." Todd said nothing. Darren swallowed. "I was cruel to you because it made me feel superior for 10 seconds in a gas station. Then you saved my wife and my son while I shook in the rain. I can't undo that. I can only tell the truth about it." His voice broke again, but he held eye contact. "I'm sorry." Todd looked at the cast forming around his own hand in white fiberglass, at Pike's dried blood on his jeans, at the waiting room door where life kept entering and leaving without ceremony. "You don't owe me performance," Todd said. "You owe them change." Darren nodded once, like taking an order. "Then that's what I'll do." 3 days later, ICU lights hummed softly, while rain tapped at a different window. Emily lay propped in bed, pale but awake, a bruise blooming yellow-purple at her temple beneath the clean bandaging. A collar still framed her neck. Darren sat in a plastic chair too small for him, elbows on knees, fingers wrapped around a paper cup gone cold. When she opened her eyes fully and found him there, she tried to smile and winced. "Hey," he said, standing too fast. "Don't move." "Sorry." "Hi." Her voice was raspy. "You look terrible." He let out a shaky laugh. "I've been told." She studied him for a long second. "Eli?" "Post-op room. He asked for chocolate milk and then fell asleep mid-sip. Surgeons think he'll keep full function with therapy." Tears pooled in Emily's eyes. "Oh, thank God." Darren sat carefully on the edge of the chair again, suddenly unsure where to put his hands. There's stuff I need to say while I still can't pretend I'm fine." She watched him, waiting. "I have spent years being the loudest person in the room, so nobody notices I'm scared," he said. "I do it at work. I do it at home. I did it at that gas station with a stranger because it was easy and ugly, and I thought I'd get away with it." Emily's eyes sharpened despite fatigue. "What stranger?" he told her. "All of it. The insult, the laughter. The same man pulling Eli from a burning car." She closed her eyes briefly. Pain for reasons bigger than stitches. "Darren, I know. He pressed his thumb into the paper cup until it bent. You've told me for years that sarcasm isn't honesty, that I turn people into categories so I never have to feel accountable. You were right. Silence sat between them, steady and heavy. I almost lost you both, he said, voice thinning. And the man I mocked told me to be the dad Eli remembers. Not to feel bad. To be better. Emily looked at him for a long time, like she was checking whether this was another polished speech. Finally, she asked, Are you asking me to forgive you right now? He shook his head immediately. No, I'm asking you to watch what I do next and decide later. Her eyes filled. That's the first honest thing you've said in years. He nodded, tears finally spilling over despite him. I love you. I love our son. I don't want him learning my worst habits as a first language. Emily reached her hand across the blanket, slow because of IV lines and pain. Darren took it like it was fragile glass. Then don't make promises in ICU, she whispered. Make choices in ordinary days. I will. You go apologize to that man properly. Not grandly. Properly. I did. I'm going to keep doing it with actions. She squeezed his hand once. Good. He laughed wetly. Are we okay? We're alive, she said. That's not the same thing. But it's where we start. He nodded, accepting the terms. Where we start. A nurse tapped at the door. 2-minute visit for your son before lights out, Mr. Mercer. Darren stood, then leaned carefully and kissed Emily's forehead above the bandage. She closed her eyes and let him. As he reached the door, she called softly, Darren? He turned. Thank you for staying. His face folded with relief and grief all at once. Always. A month later, the steel Mercy garage smelled of chain lube, coffee, and fresh plywood. Saturday first aid class had filled every folding chair. Farmers, teachers, 2 high school football coaches, the yellow raincoat woman from Miller Ridge, one of the college kids, and Liv from Quickfill sat with tourniquets and gauze packs spread across tables. Pike stood up front demonstrating airway positioning on a battered training dummy, while Manny heckled from the back. Todd, hand still stiff but usable, tightened the strap on a trauma bag and glanced up when the side door opened. Darren came in carrying a cardboard box and wearing a light cast on his wrist. No golf shirt this time. Plain flannel, muddy boots. Emily walked beside him in sneakers and a soft neck brace. Eli on crutches between them with stickers all over his splint. Conversation in the garage dipped, then resumed softer. Darren crossed to Todd and set the box on the workbench. Inside were sealed airway masks, pediatric collars, burn dressings, hemostatic gauze, good supplies, not performative junk. On top sat an envelope. From us, Darren said. And from some people at my office I told the story to, without editing myself into the hero. Todd arched an eyebrow. That had to sting. Good. Darren nodded toward the class. I also signed up, if you'll have me. From the front, Pike called, Only if you can follow instructions better than at roadside. A few people laughed, including Darren, who took it without defense. Fair. Emily stepped forward, eyes tired but warm. Thank you, she said to Todd, and it carried all the things she couldn't physically relive yet. Eli held up a page from a school notebook where he'd drawn a motorcycle, with flames behind it, and 4 stick-figure riders with giant shoulders. That one's you, Eli told Todd solemnly, pointing to the biggest figure. You have a scar, and this is Ranger. Ranger drawn with white feet. Todd took the page with his good hand. Best portrait I've had. Sheriff Bledsoe arrived halfway through class with a clipboard and a camera crew from the local station. He hated cameras. which made it matter more when he cleared his throat and read from a prepared note. County report on the Miller Ridge incident concludes civilian motorcycle responders performed life-saving actions during delayed EMS window. Recommendation adopted for community trauma caches at Miller Ridge, Harper's Crossing, and South Fork intersection. Applause bounced off corrugated walls. Manny pretended to wipe a tear. Pike threw him a nitrile glove. By autumn, one of those bright red trauma cache boxes stood at the base of Miller Ridge, bolted to a steel post with reflective tape and a lock code known to dispatch and volunteers. Todd stopped there one cool morning on his way past, engine ticking as it idled. He wore the same cracked leather vest, same scar, same old bike. At Quickfill, Liv leaned out the window and called, "Morning, Mr. Barrett. Coffee's on the counter." At Pump One, a man in a business jacket glanced at Todd's vest, hesitated, then gave a small nod instead of a smirk. Todd nodded back, not making a story out of it. Manny and Link rolled up behind him, Pike a beat after that. They fueled in the same gray light, rain threatening somewhere beyond the ridge. And when they pulled out, Todd took the lead again, tires humming over patched asphalt. He passed the new trauma cache at Miller Base, red against the dull fields, and kept riding the road that had taken and spared so much. Weathered, scarred, visible now where it counted.